We're going to talk about ethical data collection, ethical use of data. But before that, we got to talk about the economy. Because both of you have really interesting perches, Fidelity at Virgin Atlantic, about what's happening in the US, what's happening globally. So really eager to hear what your view is right now. Bank of England today raising rates by 75 basis points, following what the Fed did yesterday for the fourth time in a row. ECB President Lagarde warning today that a mild recession is possible, and it wouldn't be sufficient in itself to stem soaring prices. And just in the last few hours, we saw Lyft cut 13% of staff, Stripe cutting headcount by 14%, Amazon pausing new hires in its corporate workforce, and then yesterday, Opendoor laid off 18% of its workforce. Siobhan, I want to start with you. What does the economy look like to you at Virgin Atlantic?
So, hello everyone, by the way. So I think clearly we're heading into uncertain times. What I would say though, and we're prepared for that, I think we know it's coming, but what I would say from a Virgin Atlantic perspective is we haven't seen any impact of that yet. So we haven't seen any downturn in our revenue, we haven't seen any downturn in forward bookings, we haven't as yet seen any downturn in customer demand. Are we expecting that? Yes, but we're not seeing it.
Why don't you think you've seen it yet?
I think at the moment that people are still in the position of pent-up demand for travel. I think people are yet to see, to perhaps see some of the impact of some of the changes that are coming through financially. But I also think that there are other kind of business opportunities for us. So clearly we are also seeing, US, because of the dollar exchange, dollar exchange between the pound and the dollar. We're obviously seeing high demand actually for US point of sale into the UK at the moment. And we believe that at the moment is going to continue into 23. And I think that's fueled by a number of other instances. I mean, clearly with the very sad demise of the late Queen, we have seen a renewed interest in London, people coming back over to London and wanting to sort of spend time with us. And I think on your point about job losses, etc., I'm going to kind of preempt the question, which is actually going through the pandemic, we made all of those really kind of tough restructuring decisions that we had to make as an airline. And actually we're now back in a growth plan. We have just completed hiring, we're in the process of hiring 800 new crew and 150 new pilots. Wow. So at the moment, yes, is there likely to be an impact in terms of the speed of our return to profitability based on the recession? Very likely, but actually are we still on that trajectory for plan for growth? Yes, we are.
Mihir, weigh in on this. I mean, you don't focus on, in your role, you're not focused on the economy, but you guys have great data at what's going on, what consumers are doing at Fidelity.
Well, I'm a technologist, so I can't forecast the market, not an economist. But I think, and by the way, there's some really good articles on our website, just basically addressing some of the issues and how do you navigate, these markets. But just from internal what I see, we hired 16,000 people in last year. We are on track to hire 12,000 more people this year, and I don't see that stopping. During the pandemic, it was a pretty volatile market. The markets are still volatile, and then these are the times when people want to call, people want to get personalized advice, and they want to know how to navigate. That increases the volume for us in terms of customer service, how we need to kind of be there for our customers when they need them. So I don't see the hiring stopping at this point in time.
Okay, we're going to get to customer service in a few minutes because it's a big part of using this data that you are collecting. I do want to talk though about what this panel is about when it comes to ethical data collection. I was pretty struck when I was doing research for this, when I was doing reporting for this, to run across this KPMG survey. It was taken last year. And perhaps some of you can resonate, and this will resonate with some of you. They surveyed 2,000 adults here in the US, and they found that 30% of those adults are not willing to share their personal data for any reason, so nearly a third of us. 68% are concerned about the level of data being collected by businesses, and 40% don't trust companies to ethically use their data. What was interesting about this KPMG survey is they also surveyed people like you, people who are the decision makers in these companies who are using the data. And that surprised me even more. A third of them said that consumers should be concerned about data, and a whopping 29% of them said that their company sometimes uses unethical data collection methods. I see you nodding, Mihir. I mean, are you surprised by this?
Well, I think I'll first speak as a consumer, right? I think you should be concerned, right? Where you give your data and for what purpose and what are you getting in return. one of the quick tests is next time when you actually sign up for an app, on your iPhone or a website, look at the user agreement. And
You're not serious.
Before
mean,
you say
Raise your
accept.
hand. Raise your hand if you've read a user agreement.
Wow.
All right, two people, 3 people. Okay, maybe lawyers. I don't know.
Just read it once and
Okay.
then see some of the clauses in there and what you're giving away in terms of how you're giving kind of consent on use of data. So I think you should be concerned. Now, I met a lot of people here at the lunch, and my colleague here. Companies like ours, we are aware of the pitfalls of not using the data in a responsible way. Ours is a trust business, and first and foremost, if we lose the trust of the customers, they will not do business with us. So that comes, absolutely the number one priority, and we have a lot of internal controls around what we can use, how we use it, what is ethical, what is legal, what is contractual. So I think you can be very comfortable with large companies who are putting in a lot of effort to make sure the data is safe, it's secure, the usage is ethical, and so on and so forth. So probably there are two sides of this, where there are companies out there which are purely in the data business, right? Not in the way Bloomberg is, but purely in data collection and dissemination. And there are companies where primary business is very different. Data is out there to help customer service, customer satisfaction, build new products. That's where we are, and I'm sure you're in the same category.
Exactly the same, yeah. I completely agree. We're in the business of using data to drive customer preference. It's about trust.
So what is that line between ethical and unethical here, and the idea of what data is okay to collect, what data is not okay to collect, and how you think about this from a marketing perspective, Siobhan?
So we have, we work to all of the same things that Mihir has talked about in Atlantic, but I'd say there are sort of three key things that we would think about, and the first one is, how would I want this data to be used myself, right? If I was collecting this, how would I want to be used? Second is it going to materially improve or change the customer experience in a positive way? And then thirdly, do we understand the impact of that data change as we go through it? And we have a whole bunch of sort of data impact processes that we would have to go through.
How is this driven internally? Is it driven by external laws and regulations like GDPR, or is it driven from the perspective of
both?
There's
clearly,
not one thing that you're saying, okay, I have to adhere to this because it's the law.
We have to adhere to GDPR, obviously, and for all of the right reasons. Actually, I think as a process, it's critical, it's important, and we were talking about it. Privacy in GDPR is one of the core 7 tenets that sits in GDPR. So we have to adhere to it, but also. To Mihir's point, we are a brand that is built on trust, and therefore then customers have to trust that the data they are giving to us is going to be used in a positive way. Throughout the whole journey, wherever we are collecting data for customers, we make that really clear. We make it clear through all our touch points, we make it clear through our communications, and they can opt out of that at any point.
Okay, I want to bring up a slide. I want to make sure we have it ready. This is a tweet that I saw a few weeks ago from a friend. I'll read it for everyone. This is Mike Murphy. I follow him on Twitter. He tweets a lot. He said, I ordered something from Brooks Brothers for the wedding. He just got married 6 days ago. They've sent me 17 emails since then. And you can see a screenshot right there of all the emails that he's gotten in 6 days. Obviously, somebody made a decision, not to call it Brooks Brothers here, but obviously someone made a decision that this was an appropriate use of customer data, Mihir. That the idea of, and it's probably worked in the past, right? Like,
it's probably a bad decision. The fact that you're bringing it up here as an example, you know it's a bad decision, right? Somebody made.
Hey, so I'm not making these decisions.
No. So what I'm trying to say is that you have to kind of have guidelines, frameworks, rules, how to govern these kind of usage of data. Something slipped through. They may have a really good framework, but something slipped through. But we want to make sure. I'll give you an example in Fidelity. First thing is individual, just to protect ourselves from ourselves, right? We actually encrypt all personal identifying information, right? So you can use the data as much as you want, but you can use it in aggregation, right? So we can say customers are telling us this is what they want, these are the products they want, these are the gaps in customer service, but you can't pinpoint, nobody will ever get access to a single specific, let's say, TIMS records, right? So that's the first protection. if you have a use case, there's a governance committee for any AI use case, right? So before you even start modeling that particular use case, you have to go and get that use case approved. Once you're in the development phase, there are automated tools, and there are a lot of tools in the market now in open source community. We have built automated tools that actually give us bias scores, right? So are your models, are they ethical? Are they showing some kind of bias? What kind of data are you using? You have to be green on about 6 or 7 different counts, otherwise you have to go back and remodel.
Siobhan, I see you nodding there when it comes to bias, and that's something that I wanted to hit on. How do you make sure that you're not you don't have any bias when it comes to the models that you're using, when it comes to the analysis?
Exactly the same. It's about drift, right? So it's about making sure that the data that you are collecting, comparing that to the data that you have modeled against, looking for the variances, and then recognizing when you are starting to get that drift, and then adjusting appropriately for it.
As a CMO, what do you think of when you see these emails?
It's clearly not a good example.
Really?
Yeah, it's clearly not a good example. No, but to be fair, I think as well, I suspect that Brooks Brothers have all the appropriate things in place. This could be just a.
Oh, and yeah, I'm not saying it's necessarily unethical or anything. No. I'm just saying it's not necessarily serving consumers the way.
It's not great customer service, exactly. Right. And you will see that, right? Because customers will start to say, "Thank you very much. No, I'm going to start unsubscribing."
Well, so what has been effective for you from a marketing perspective, given that you are able to collect certain amounts of data, what has been effective in terms of getting those customers on flights, getting them to fly again, and then making sure that they're delighted with their experience so they then choose you guys for their next flight?
So it's important to say there are 2 types of data that we collect, right? There is data that we have to collect in order for you to be able to complete your business with us, right? So we have to be able to collect your legal name, we have to be able to collect your travel documentation, we have to be able to collect your destinations, etc. That is a requirement of travel. Anything else we collect on top of that, your preferences, is because you have chosen to give them to us. And the quid pro quo for doing that is because that there is a value exchange in doing so, which brings you into personalization. So, for example, having to tell us constantly that you want a certain type of a meal is frustrating. Having to tell us constantly that you might require special assistance is frustrating. If you give us that information and we store that in your single customer record, actually it will make that experience better. So I think where there's a value exchange, it makes sense.
Does that translate into a stickier experience for a customer, though?
Yes. I mean, we see that through the loyalty program, but absolutely. And we see it as well in NPS. So we know that customers who have done that exchange with, so for example, we have a mechanism where we call it pre-order, pre-select, where you can tell us in advance your meal preference. Great for us because it reduces wastage on the plane, but great for a customer because you have that personalized experience. We have seen a 10-point improvement in NPS on food and beverage for those customers who partake in that survey.
You have different goals when it comes to the data that you collect, Mihir. I mean, you're not necessarily trying to get people, you want people to stay on the Fidelity platform, but you're not in the marketing, from a marketing perspective, trying to attract new people to it, correct?
It's really about customer experience, which is probably the
existing customer
experience, which is probably the biggest differentiator in financial services. I would say the products kind of look the same. And then the second is around gaps in either our offerings, whether it's the experience on our website, mobile, etc., or gaps in our products, right? I mean, a simple example would be that right now we're seeing a lot of phone calls coming in. We're saying they're worried about inflation, and they're calling the phone lines. And what we could do proactively is, once you notice that, we can actually have our experts write up an article or a point of view and put it on our website, which is exactly what we're doing.
So you're doing analysis of transcripts of calls.
That's right.
It's telling you that inflation is a key concern for customers, and you could proactively take that on by publishing some article about inflation.
Or also publishing internal points of view to our advisors. So our advisors, when they personally meet the customers in the branches, they also have the same kind of analysis that is done.
Siobhan, are you doing anything like that when it comes to AI?
We do the same. So we have listening. We have a contact center system which will look at actually same thing, volume of calls that are coming in. Where are we seeing the biggest pain points or breakages for customers? Therefore, and that will then inform our development roadmaps, our digital experience, our customer journeys piece. We do the same with web data. Look at where have we got the holes in the bucket? Where are we seeing constant kind of breakage and fallout? What can we do to improve that?
How else are you using AI?
We're also looking at automation, so just also improving processes, being able to kind of expedite or speed up some of the things that we would want to do through that contact center, to look at machine learning for most frequently asked questions. How can we better direct customers through help channels, search channels, etc., and just optimizing within the organization.
Just going back to the customer service example. And so we get, the biggest challenge is we have 35 million customers. Just on a workplace business, we get about 17 million calls a year. So when we say our primary goal is to listen to our customers and listen to what they're saying, how do you listen to 35 million customers, right? And that's where technology comes in, and data comes in, and AI comes in, is that we are actually be able to do what we are saying, which is listen to our customers, through automated transcription of our phone calls, and also the rep notes when you visit, your branches and things like that.
Can you take us more into what happens internally when you're talking about different data that you want to collect? I mean, I would imagine that any sort of roadblocks or any sort of rules that say you can't collect this data make your job more difficult.
So first thing is we're not out there looking for new data to collect. Most of the data is actually part of your relationship with us, right? So you can actually start a relationship with, say, Fidelity by giving just the amount of data that is on your driver's license, right? And that's by law. We have to know who you are and verify who you are. And that's it. And basically, at that point, you may choose not to give us anything if there is no value exchange. But you transact, once you're a Fidelity customer, you transact with us. So we have your trades, we have your mutual funds, et cetera. So we do know more than what you've given us through your transactions. Again, by law, we need to kind of keep a record of those. You progress down if you want financial advice and you have certain goals in life, retirement, marriage, divorce, your life events, and if you want to talk about those with your financial advisor, then you have to actually sit down and share more about maybe your expenses or maybe other incomes. So progressively, there is a value exchange, and you are giving data only when you are really getting something in return, right? And that data is good enough for us to do a lot of analysis, call, whether it's your intent and why you called, new products you're looking for. I mean, some of our new product offerings in alternative space and ESG, sustainable products, et cetera, all came from, listening to our customers, right, and what they're saying.
Listening to your customers when they're on the phone asking about it and analyzing transcripts, or
that's one mechanism. There would be focus groups and surveys, and they'll be walking into the branches. There's also looking at trends outside. So it's all part of your scanning, what's coming next, and so on and so forth.
Siobhan, jump on in your nine.
I was going to say the other, completely agree. The other, I guess, challenge that we have had is that as an airline, we transact through a distribution model, right? We don't, and not everything comes through a direct channel.
Meaning an online travel agency, an OTA.
Exactly. The OTA, TMC, etc. And so, pre-pandemic, we had contact information for about 40% of the people who would travel with us, right? Which was kind of okay, not great. Meant if there was changes to your flying schedule, and you'd come through an indirect channel or through a direct channel, and we didn't have your contact details, quite difficult for us to inform you of schedule changes. During the pandemic, obviously, became a serious issue, and so explaining to customers, both direct and indirect, why we wanted that information to keep them up to date with changes in travel regulations, changes in entry into organisations, entry into countries. We've now gone from having a contact rate of 40 to literally nearly 100%. So the hurdle on that point was then having conversations with the owners of that third-party data to explain to them it's not about acquisition of their customers, it's about a better service.
Okay, so that actually brings me...
Go ahead. Just expand that. I think the problem with companies like us and big, large companies is not about collecting new data about customers. It's about utilizing the data that you already have. Yeah. And that's really the biggest challenge in most companies, that we are underinvested in data engineering, data architecture, for the last 20 years, right? And we're trying to do a catch-up, and it still doesn't work. It's all fragmented. So data is either kind of the captive of an org structure or captive of a business function, and it's not a platform. And we talk about platforms a lot, but data itself should be an enterprise platform, and we have not invested enough. So my role actually is not about getting new data, but is organizing our data that we already have in a way that not only we can utilize it at a variety of different value points for our customer, but also protect it. If you have data spread all over the place, it's very difficult to protect it also.
Okay, so if it's more about processing the data that you have and less about collecting new data, then do you think it's less important for customers to be okay with data collection if you don't necessarily need new data at this point?
I would say at Atlantic, we're both, right? So we're on the same journey in terms of building that single view of a customer. That's CDP, understanding that single profile, that identity, attaching all the data that we do hold about them together in a useful, helpful, relevant place, one version of the truth, being able to use that either in time or in real time. But we also want to acquire, part of our growth strategy, we want to acquire new people into the organisation. So for us, it's both. But I think it comes back to that being really clear why you are using it and what is the benefit for giving us that data exchange. Customers don't have to do it.
I want to go back to something that you said just a few minutes, Siobhan, the idea that people are now seeking out this information during the pandemic about, okay, where is it okay to fly, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
How do you think customers view their data differently, or their willingness to give their data to companies as a result of the pandemic? And the reason I thought of this is, I'm thinking about other things that I have to show people as a result of the pandemic. Vaccine card, talk about when I got my last booster, that sort of thing. Yeah. Has that changed us?
Really, we've seen nothing but really positive feedback for making that much simpler, much easier. Automating all of that, putting it through digital channels has made customers actually feel much more comfortable and confident about wanting to do that because there's a benefit. It's a simpler, faster process for them to be able to do so when they get to an airport.
You don't need to be vaccinated to trade stocks, though.
No, but I think there is interesting. I guess during the pandemic, there's an interesting debate. And I think people have realized that there's a trade-off between safety and privacy, right? You have to probably share your vaccination information to get into an airport, and there is no way around it, right? So I think that it has caused a little bit of a debate around these trade-offs that you have to make. I would say also that I think the pandemic also, there was a big momentum before the pandemic around privacy, and then the priorities shifted during the pandemic, right? We all focused on what is going on. And I think that is starting up again. So you will see a lot more happening again on new laws coming in. The states actually, just like California, there are 13 other states passing new laws, countries passing laws, and so on and so forth.
Okay, before we end, and we're running out of time here, but I always like to end with looking forward and looking toward the future. So Siobhan, if we're sitting here 5 years from now, what's the conversation about data collection and analysis and processing that we're having?
I think it will probably be a step on from what the conversation that we're having today, which is
not revolutionary, but more incremental.
I think it will be more organic.
Mihir?
I think it'll be transparent. There'll be more transparency, both on sides of people who are collecting data.
Yeah.
It'll be forced by regulation to some extent. And then, by the way, the regulations are nothing but good data practices. Okay, they are. I mean, I looked at GDPR and CCPA. If you didn't have those regulations, if you look at the spirit of it, we should be doing that anyway.
So even though CCPA is specific to California, you follow it throughout the entire country. Yeah. So that's sort of our version of GDPR to a certain extent.
Yeah. And a lot of other states.
Do we see some federally mandated privacy practice or safety practices around data?
I would welcome that, because one of the biggest challenges is once each state comes up with their own regulations for small businesses, medium-sized businesses, very, very difficult to navigate, and it's very expensive. Yeah. So if there is a standard at the federal level, that will help us all.
All right. Mihir, really appreciate it. Siobhan, really good to see you. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Read the privacy policies of all the apps you download, right? That's what we got to do.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.